Hey guys, this is Hunter. Welcome back to another video. Now I know, Fender just released the brand new Ultra series and that's the current talk of the town. Call me crazy though, I'm more into the Vintera series because they're awesome in like the complete opposite way. The American-made Ultra series is super modern. You've got your locking tuners, your noiseless pickups, your shaved neck heel, and for around $2,000 that's all well and good. The Vintera Series 50 Telecaster meanwhile is much more affordable, coming in at about half the price, and spec-wise gives you about as authentically a vintage experience as possible. Now, as someone who has only played more modern styled Fenders like the Player Series and the Jim Root Signatures, I was very curious to see how this 50 style one would compare. And after spending some time with one, I can see why people have such strong feelings about them. It looks very similar to, let's face it, a lot of other Telecasters, but it feels unlike anything else I've ever tried, which I'll get into after the track. But for now, in a demo that basically no one outside this community was asking for, let's take a closer look at how this 50s Telecaster does for metal. Because why not? Alright, so I know I've been teasing this one for a while. Honestly, I got stuck writing the demo track. I knew I wanted to do something different, and I couldn't quite figure it out. I'm filming the review first before the demo portion, so hopefully it came out cool, otherwise Fender will have wasted their sponsorship money. Anyways, if you enjoyed it, hit that like button, that actually really helps out, and now let's get into it. So I usually start these reviews by going over the look and the construction, so I mean, it's a Tele. We've got an alder body with a bolt-on maple neck and a 21 fret maple fingerboard. So absolutely zero surprises here, and actually that's kind of the entire point. The Vintera series is an affordable gateway into vintage Fender experiences. The 2019 Vintera series is an affordable gateway into vintage Fender experiences. And so if you're not gonna watch any more of this review, the best way I can sum up the 50s Telecaster is vintage style with modern reliability. And if you are interested in watching more, let me expand on what I mean by that. So it comes in 3 of the favorite vintage colors, 2-color Sunburst, Fiesta Red, and I chose Sonic Blue. I don't know, there's something about pastel blue Fenders that just look so right. If I'm honest, I'm not in love with the pickguard though. It's just straight up flat white plastic. I know it's the vintage style, but it just looks so boring compared to a beveled edge multiply. Alright, so I'm not gonna lie, in terms of how it feels to play, this guitar caught me completely by surprise. As someone who hasn't had an extensive record with a lot of Fender guitars, I mean relative to other brands, and especially on the vintage style of things, I kind of assumed that this would be a standard Tele playing experience. But, no. Not really. I mean, there are some of the familiar staples, the blocky body that hasn't changed since the 1950s, which includes the big-ass neck joint, which isn't as disruptive for upper fret axis as you might think. If you played a Tele, you know what I mean. But now onto what I wasn't expecting. This neck is as close to a baseball bat as I've ever come across on any guitar. It's like round on both sides. So one, the shape, it is very substantial. The spec sheet says it's an early 50s U. If you're not familiar with Fender terminology, let me explain what that actually means. This is thick, with like 4 C's, or sideways U's, I guess technically, because it is U-shaped. And then 2, the fingerboard radius. Now in general, I like round fingerboards. A lot of modern guitars come with 16-inch radii, which I find too flat. By contrast, I'm huge into Fender's standard 9.5-inch radius. Now this is 7.5. Even for me, this is a little extreme. It is very, very round. For chords and riffs, I actually really like it, but for stuff like bends and vibratos, it feels very strange. Like, I've had this for a few weeks now, and I still haven't really gotten used to it. I like how chunky the neck is, like it feels badass to chug out a few chords, even though with so much gloss it doesn't feel particularly quick. I wouldn't say it's uncomfortable, it's just different. The frets are also really small, and I guess I forgot vintage frets are this narrow. For whatever reason, I was expecting them to be the same size as the ones on my Player Series Tele. But yeah, not at all. They're relatively tiny, which will either be a good or a not so good thing depending on your taste. That being said, the fretwork itself is good, level, no sharp ends. I also love how well polished the frets are on guitars made from Fender's Mexico facility. Every one I've tried so far has had frets that are shiny as f***. Again, vintage style, modern reliability. And the neck isn't the only thing that makes this a very different playing experience from the more modern themed Player Series. There's also the hardware, like this old school ashtray bridge. Okay, I don't think it's very comfortable compared to modern bridges, but I will admit it looks very cool. It's like brushed chrome, it's got the Fender patent pending text stamped into it, and then it's got like a two-tone thing going on with a shiny chrome on the other side of the pickup. And then the giant brass barrel saddles, it's so unapologetically mid-20th century. In terms of like sustain, it's kind of awesome. At the same time though, for palm muting, it's kind of the worst. Under pressure from your palm, the strings sink below the edges, so you can't really dig in for heavy chugs. And also the saddle screws are super sharp and poke into your hand. So yeah, I don't think anyone watching this video is going to be surprised that this isn't the ultimate metal machine. But if you're looking into this guitar's versatile all-around workhorse, sound-wise it'll do it, but the bridge is something you might want to be aware of. And for the other hardware, we've got similarly vintage-inspired appointments. The tuners are super dope with the old-school rectangular housing and little metal buttons. They also feel really good, they're smooth and sturdy. The nut is cut really nicely and is flush with the sides of the neck, couldn't find any issues there. I also really like the controls. I mean, it looks like your normal Tele complement, but the knobs have arched domes instead of the flat tops on the Player Series. Most importantly though, the 3-way switch is so satisfyingly clicky. I could make an entire ASMR video on just the switch. That sound fulfills my soul. Now, one area where the Vintera series does break the vintage theme though is with the gig bag. And don't get me wrong, I love how Fender has included one. I would have been disappointed if they hadn't on a $900 guitar as well built as it is. It's just your standard padded gig bag. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I think it would have been cool to have like a vintage tweed styled gig bag for the Vintera series. I don't know. Just me? Alright, moving on. Now this guitar comes loaded with 50's Tele pickups, which have apparently been revoiced for this updated Vintera series launch. So I'm playing this through my Marshall DSL 100H, and I'm using Glenn Fricker's Lancaster Mesa 4x12 IR on my 2 Notes Torpedo Live. Let's hear what it sounds like. Alright, so if you've been looking up other videos and demos of this guitar, you know it does the telly thing. And now, you know that it chugs. Super important. I know. These are the kinds of questions that need answering. Alright, so on paper, this is probably not the guitar for me. And you know what? That's kind of why I had so much fun with it. It's completely unlike anything else I have in my collection. Everything, from the way the neck is, to the pickup selection, to the vintage color choice, nothing I own is like this. That's the beauty of the Vintera series, and this guitar in particular. I love the variety that guitars come in, and vintage Fenders have such a unique feel. But because spec-wise, they're not at all what I normally look for in a guitar for the style of music that I normally play, there's no way I would ever pay the money for a legit vintage 50s telly or like a custom shop reissue. This gives me the experience, the feel, and all the associated inspiration of a high-quality vintage Fender at an attainable price point. I mean, that is super cool. I said it at the beginning, and time again, it's what this guitar comes back to. Vintage style with modern reliability, and I'm all about it. So if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and hit the like button. These are of course just my opinions, and I'd love to know what you think. So let me know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. That way you don't miss new uploads. Thanks to Fender for sending this guitar for the review, and to Luke for mixing everything. Links to social media, Patreon, merch, and the Discord server are in the description. As always, thanks so much for watching. You've been awesome, and I'll see you for the next video.